Reps in reserve is a great way to use it as a more subjective option when we're training. So you just say, in this example, 3 reps in reserve, we're aiming for 10. So pick a weight that you can do for 13 reps. Again, sometimes takes a while for people to understand what that feels like, but you probably wouldn't do 10 reps and 3 reps in reserve. It's a fair disparity. You might start with 8 and 2. That's a little bit easier for people to gauge what they can get 10 out of. But reps in reserve is a really easy way to start with someone that doesn't really know how much they can lift, but on top of that, someone that has a normal life. And sometimes they feel shit, sometimes they feel good. And in a personal training environment, you will have to reduce the load if they're feeling shit. It's just the way it happens. Now, you can pick times where you go, you've had a tough couple of days, this is how we can just sweat it out. I think we can push through and get a good result. But there's other days where you're just like, you know what, let's get what we can get. Reps in reserve is a good way to do it. Rate of perceived exertion. So 6 reps at an RPE 7. Does everyone know what RPE is? Rate of perceived exertion. So rate of perceived exertion is known as a Borg scale. Dr. Borg, I say that because I can't remember his first name, did an initial scale that was 6 to 20, and it was tried to be based off heart rate. So like 60 beats per minute is 6. And as the heart rate went up, it matched heart rate really nicely. So a maximum exertion of 20 is 200. In a lot of VO2 max testing, it was really nice. People say, oh, you know, they've got the scale in front of them. So every number has a word. It's hard or kind of hard or hardest thing I've done, that type of thing. So it's very specific. And people will be running and say, oh, yeah, 11. And look at their heart rate and it's 110. Fucking brilliant. This is great. And they found it worked quite well. They then found that when we used a 6 to 20 in the real world, people are like, 6 to 20? I don't know, like, what am I? Like, if 6 is when I'm asleep, so then 20 is the hardest. Like, I found it very hard to do. So a study came out, they said, screw it, we're just gonna go 0 to 10. People kind of know, 10's the hardest, 0, I'm asleep. How hard was that? They gave a few numberings, and they found that correlated pretty bloody well to the 20 scale, which correlated pretty well to heart rate. And then they started adjusting the names and kind of worked out that a 0 to 10 works very well. The differentiating factor is 5 is actually hard. So what they decided is, well, most of the time we need to differentiate how hard something is, not if it's hard. Because realistically, when you're training, yeah, you can have some easier sessions, but a majority of training will shift between medium to extremely hard. So there's this gap of where you're kind of either asleep or you're training moderately. This weird gap of, oh, that was easy, isn't really as common as people think when you're working with people that are training. So 5 is hard. So then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are then variations of how hard. Now you can adjust it for your group. Like again, working in football, we adjusted, we had some funny terms for each number and made sure it sort of connected with them. The most important thing about RPE is just making sure it's consistent. They understand what each number is and it's consistent.